Welcome to TradeTheNBA.com. This is John's report is for the 17th of December. Well, as we talked about before, the move above being yellow would be the net positive. Push towards getting back to the 100% below would be more of a negative strike. We had the rising gold, which suggested that even within the weakened readings that we were seeing here, we were likely to hold up. And the NASDAQ had also been the proof of uh, that there was pretty strong support going on in there. It was interesting, though, too. We did get the report from the Philadelphia Fed, which basically confirmed that all the job numbers that had been created over the year for the election were fake, that none of them existed, they were just pie in the sky, and that there was really a severe downturn overall, broadly across, well, half the states in the union. And, we won't get the final report until next year in February, which will further go back and probably point out that even at the beginning of last year, it was all fake as well. And as we were talking about when the Fed was talking about easing, it was like it didn't make any sense given what we were seeing from the reported job numbers, because why would they cut if everything was rosy? Well, in reality, somehow they knew that the numbers were fake, and they realized that the economy was in a lot worse shape than was being depicted. Um, we knew it as well. That was just part of the joke, because we knew that it was all a bunch of hooey about what was going on, and it was reflected in the election as well. And people were not satisfied with where their economic outlook was. But you can see the NQ was the driving force in keeping things and far more muted from an S&P standpoint. And this is the tech-driven mania that's currently taking place, in this belief that AI is the future for all things. When we turn to treasuries, we see that we have this back foot. And it's also, it goes back to the same thing. A lot of earnings, everything else was based on this idea of, the growth factor in that. And when you realize that none of these jobs were created, there was never really this impetus. And then you begin to wonder how much of government spending is really responsible for a lot of the corporate earnings. And if that is changed, what's going to happen to them? That'll be an interesting one going forward. We'll see how, but I don't think much of the market move anyway has anything to do with earnings. This has to do with devaluation, dollar, and the broader perspectives of continued government deficits to support big business, really. Um, there's no other way to describe it. From an oil standpoint, still caught in this middle range, and I don't think that we're going to see a whole lot of movement unless the world conflict creates some kind of bottleneck. Overall, it shouldn't have any impact. And again, the eurozone, we beat it to death, and there's plenty more trauma for the eurozone to go forward. But it's an important one because it will affect S&P going forward, particularly as Europe becomes more and more of a drain, as they realize that their model is continuing to fall apart. Their push towards the green initiatives is basically just driving their economies into disaster zone. And as long as that persists, I don't see any improvement, not just near term, but long term. I really think that there's a good possibility in 4 years, the Eurozone could be pretty much headed out the door. We'll see. When we look at gold, not a whole lot happening there. While there's some inflation, the rate has just reduced to nominal at this particular stage. And unless the Fed cuts continually, then that's what everyone's waiting for. That will drive gold back up again. Bitcoin, of course, has been riding the high wave of the potential that when Trump comes in, it's going to make it a reserve as far as the U.S. Treasury. They're going to buy up 1 million Bitcoin, and that's going to send it to the moon, blah, 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 blah. Buy the rumor, sell the news sort of construct. Not representing itself the same way to ETH, not making the new highs, relatively speaking, but there'll be some evening out both ways, and that I think that it's just a lot of positioning. And where else you gotta create some kind of narrative, because right now it's pretty much everything's on hold. The expectation is that the budget will get some type of extension, whether it will be a continuing resolution, just funding through the beginning of Trump's administration, or if they're able to sneak in some longer term things. I know they're trying to create stuff for big pharma and everything else as an outgoing gesture. we'll see how it plays out. But at the end of the day, it's just a lot of spending for not much return. When we look at it from an intraday standpoint, you can see it was big, nice little pump up there into what was built-in softness. We had the peak, but as long as that magenta stayed above, it was holding on to it. And then when it finally started to break down, the next MBI white spike came through, and that was about here. And then that's where we had a pretty strong decline that just pretty much filled in all the way back through the early pop of it. It took care of this positive extreme right here, which was the main one of the day. And that was all it took. So it was pretty even. Came back nice, clean and forward. In the European session here, you can see continuing decline. We'll probably see more of that back and forth. There really isn't a whole lot to drive things because there's not a lot of great news. It's not horrible, but you know, companies from an earnings standpoint are likely to do a lot poorer than expected. We may not see that result come out until the beginning of next quarter, and I think that all by then they're hoping that the narrative of a new administration will flip everything around and it'll all be rosy again. So we'll continue to follow those readings, and we'll get into some in-depth look at the charts from a daily standpoint that will give us a broader view of what we might expect. And then we'll continue to plug away and plan for the next year. As always, though, anything relevant, I'll put in the Skype chat. Have a good one. Trade well.